Okay, it's preparing to live stream. Exciting.
Yes.
Okay, so redirecting to YouTube, it tells us. All right. Okay, this we don't need.
Hello, John.
Hi, everybody.
Hey, John.
Okay. I've now muted the YouTube so I don't have to listen to it.
And we're good.
We are recording and we are live streaming. So yes, we're good.
Here we go. Hello, everyone. As we do to start every meeting, we've got to let our constituents know who we are, who's attending, where we're from. George, let's stick to our previous program and you call us out and we'll say if we're here or not.
All right, fair enough. Kevin Miller,
I'm here.
Brian Kelsey,
Here.
Matt
Present.
Wallach,
Here.
Lakita Caldwell. Jane Herring, we know, is vacationing. She may pop in from the north, but she's not going to be here. Karen Ann Hoffman.
Here.
John Johnson.
Present, and I am here from the north.
Very good. Leah Kolb.
Here.
Excellent. Susan Lipp.
Here.
John Potter.
Present.
Gerard Randall.
Present.
Mary Reinders.
Present.
Lynn Ritchie's going to be a little late. Jennifer Schwarzkopf
Here.
and Bob Wagner.
Present.
And Arts Board staff is Karen Geschko. I see her. She's nodding. We'll take that as a nod.
I'm here with really poor connection.
Okay. Caitlin Burrow.
Here.
Dale Johnson.
Here.
All right. Excellent. And me, George Sugros. That's it.
Thank you, George. All right, we need an approval of the agenda.
So moved. Second, Randall.
Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
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 Hi.
Any opposed? Hearing none, motion carries. Now we would like to approve the minutes.
So
Got
move,
it.
Johnson.
Thank you, John.
Second, Hoffman.
Thank you, Karen Ann. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed? Hearing
Kevin?
none? Go, yes, sir.
Is this for all of the minutes?
Yes. Oh, I'm sorry. I suppose we should clarify that. So it was the annual meeting, the quarterly meeting, and then the July special meeting. Good point, my friend. Do we
Okay,
need to
this-
amend that motion?
No,
I
you-
will amend my motion to be for all of that.
Thank you.
I'll amend my second.
All right. All right. All in favor of the amended motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Hi.
Aye.
Aye.
Any
Aye.
opposed? Hearing none, motion carries. Thanks. Good catch. Excellent. We're moving on to the logistics, and being that as May, thank you all for agreeing to do the Zoom. I know it probably fits in with everybody's schedule, but I also think it aligns well with, our governor and the health mandates that the state is following. And I just think it's appropriate that we do as well. As much as I'd love to be in Madison or one of these other cities with you all, I think it's good to be responsible. So thank you much. George, you've got the next meeting is set up for Milwaukee.
Yeah.
My crystal ball says I'm dubious if we get to be in house on that one as well, but
Yeah, I mean, I think that's probably true, but just wanting to keep the rhythm at least on the page, even if we're not going to be there. And then obviously we'll get you the word well in advance that you'll know whether there's a traveling piece of this or not.
Good, excellent. And then WIGCOT, I suppose we're still too far out. Has there been any discussion in the, with tourism, if they're just planning like it's gonna happen, or are they?
Yeah, I mean, I think that the plan right now is to do it in person. They've put it Madison off a couple of years now, but obviously COVID may have other ideas. So they've been really good about being attentive to the governor's requirements as well as COVID's requirements. So assume we'll be in Madison for WIGCOT, and if again we're not, you'll know in advance.
Yeah, WACVB is planning on holding theirs in La Crosse November 4th and 5th. That's Wisconsin Area Convention and Visitor Bureau's big meeting.
Right.
They're planning in person, which surprised me.
The other meetings are, we keep saying we're going to go to Central Wisconsin, so hopefully that timing still works for you, Karen Ann, to do the May meeting in Central Wisconsin.
I would love to host you guys.
And then, thank you. And Madison next September, and then again December in Milwaukee. The interesting news is, having visited Epic, they have certainly invited us to consider holding our meeting out on the Epic Insurance campus, which is quite amazing and full of art, and you will love it. So if we're lucky enough to pull that off, again, COVID willing,
Yeah.
hopefully we'll have that as a venue for us. So those are the meetings, and we certainly need a motion to approve those meeting dates. Those are the proposed meeting dates, but we want to make
We do
sure
need a
that-
motion.
Yeah.
So
Well,
moved. Gerard.
Thank you, Gerard.
Second. Off.
Did you get that, Matt? The second?
I did not.
Wagner.
Schwarzkopf.
Yeah, Jennifer had the second on that. Yep.
Oh, sorry.
No, you did. You did. You had the second. You're good.
Any discussion? Hearing none. All in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed? Hearing none, motion carries. Thank you, everyone. Panel chair assignments.
So you have a grid in your notes there that talks about the upcoming panel meetings, and in the agenda you also have the dates of those meetings. One error in my creation of that grid is that John Potter was the chair of the creation and presentation panel last November. So my apologies for getting that incorrect. Otherwise, for those of you who haven't done this before, it's the opportunity to lead a panel meeting, which in this instance means making sure that you're working with staff to keep the wonderful panelists on task
Excuse my
and on
language.
time.
This is rough.
On task and on time. And so you don't have a vote on the applications, but you do have the responsibility to report back to your fellow board members at the subsequent board meeting about the work of the panel and any recommendations the panel might have had.
I'd love to do the Folk Arts and Folk Arts Apprentice again if possible.
No, Brian, I wanted to do that one at least once.
I was like, John tried last year and you got him.
I volunteer for the arts and education in April.
Thanks, Gerard.
John, do you really want it? Is that what you're?
I've wanted it for the past 2 years.
Well, Caitlin, John is welcome to do it. I'll take a
I'll put
break.
you on backup.
There you go. I'll be back up for
Thank you.
John.
Thanks, Brian.
You're welcome, John.
I could also do the arts and education. So I did not speak up first though.
John, I'll put you back up for our 10. Thank you.
Always good to have backup.
Okay, so it looks like we're looking at local arts. And the one that's coming up, or the two that are coming up quickly. Karen Ann, are you in for the Woodland Indian?
I am totally in, and we've already been chit-chatting.
Very good.
Thanks, Karen Ann.
Oh, for sure, Caitlin. Thank you.
Is there anybody who wants to be sure to back that up just in case something might happen?
Marie,
She can't do it, but if she could, she
you can
would.
sit in.
We will be sitting
Definitely,
in.
she will be sitting in.
Yay.
Definitely so.
So we still need, what do we need yet? We need creation and presentation.
Right, and local arts.
I could do local arts. I can't do creation and presentation. I'll be out of the country at the time. This is Jennifer, by the way.
Thanks, Jennifer.
My
Okay, so
pleasure.
we can use a backup on local arts, and then we need the creation and presentation this year is music, so could be very interesting as always.
It's just, I can't, I'm up for jury duty the month of November. So, and those are on Fridays, primarily up in Door County. So, I mean, there might be a chance, but I don't know.
I think I might be able to do that one. It was music especially.
Thank you, Susan.
Okay. Susan for music, and then we need backups in creation and presentation and local arts.
Who do we have for creation and presentation?
It's music this year, so they're probably
No,
about,
which board member signed up?
oh, thank you.
Lip.
Susan Lip. Yeah.
I can back up for local arts, John.
Thank you, John.
Okay.
And so as a backup, just a clarification, probably not the day before I figure out that I'm going to be on board, but at some point before it actually happens, right?
Right. That'd
Got
be
it.
correct.
Thank you.
Yeah. One hopes that in November we won't have the same problem we might have in April, which is the weather might keep somebody from things if we were doing them in person. These days with the internet, it might be more somebody's health that takes a turn and we need somebody to step in. Okay, so again, we need a backup for the creation and presentation and Woodland Indian, again, just in case.
I would do
Welcome,
backup.
Lynn.
I would do backup for Woodland Indian Potter.
Okay.
Lynn, are you able to do a backup for creation and presentation? You haven't been here for the discussion part. And you're on mute.
I don't think I can because we apply for that. Lola applies for that.
Music side?
Oh, no, because I don't know what it is. Just music side? No.
Yeah, it's just music.
When is it?
November 19th.
Friday, November 19th.
Yes, I can do. Yes, I can.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Lynn.
All right.
George,
Thank you.
would you mind just running down the list just to make sure I have it correct?
Sure, no problem. So what I have is in creation and presentation, Susan Lip, chair, backup Lynn Ritchie. Woodland Indian Arts, chair is Karen Ann, and the backup is John Potter. In arts education, the chair is Gerard, and the backup is John Johnson. In folk arts, chair is John Potter, and the backup is Brian Kelsey. In local arts, the chair is Jennifer Schwartzkopf, and the backup is John Johnson.
Perfect, thank you.
You bet.
Black on the screen. There you go. All right, we all caught up?
I think we are.
All right, moving on to the standing committee reports. And I know you folks have been very busy just with all the email updates, so and scheduling. So let's start out, where did it go now? I lost it. Start out with Jennifer, the nominating committee.
So the issue here is, does the nominating committee want to continue, and they need to be elected by the board. So the nominating committee last time was Jennifer was the chair, Susan Lipp and Mary Reinders were on the committee. So the first question is yes. Jennifer,
At least for
says she-
me.
Yep, you'll continue.
It was a very busy committee this last
Yeah, right.
formed. So I don't know, but yeah, no, absolutely. Hopefully we'll be able to do more, but yes, absolutely. My pleasure.
I will continue. This is Mary.
I will too.
Okay. So then somebody needs to move that slate for the nominating committee.
So moved, Kelsey.
Is there a second?
Butler.
Mr. Chair,
Yes, sir.
you need to call for the vote.
Thank you. I'm being invaded here. Let's have the motion for the nominating committee, what they put forth, the slate. We got a first.
You got a motion by Mr. Kelsey and a second by Mr. Potter.
All right, any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Hearing none, excuse me? Oh, hearing none, motion passes. Thank you. Excellent. All right. Thank you, Jennifer, and everyone for your work on that. And Mr. Potter and the Budget Finance Committee.
Thank you, Kevin. The Budget Committee met this last Tuesday and would recommend the budget that is in your packet. George, I would appreciate it if you would review the last fiscal year, the current fiscal year, and any other items that you may find appropriate.
Thank you, John. I shall do so. As far as the current fiscal year, we're continuing to work with DOA to put it to the past fiscal year, putting that fiscal year to bed with DOA. So we're still making sure that they've applied the monies correctly, put federal dollars where federal dollars belong and state dollars where state dollars belong. But that's an ongoing process. As for the fiscal 22 budget that you have in front of you, it is reflective of the amount that we got from the National Endowment for the Arts, which is $887,100. And that amount does not include the monies we got from the American Rescue Plan, which we'll talk about in a minute. So as you will see and I wish I had this as a page number, and this is something for myself to remember. But on the page that says, how does this match? Right now, what the state has versus what the feds have given us, the difference is $106,500. And that includes a shortfall from last fiscal year of 26.5, and the one that's projected for the current fiscal year, which is $80,000. So I will say just right off the top that we continue to wait for the Joint Committee on Finance to schedule a 1310 meeting, which is the meeting at which we can make our request that the match be made.
George, is there any other organization or any other division of the state that goes through the 1310 process as often as the Wisconsin Arts Board?
Boy, I don't know if I know the answer to that question, but I do know that it's out there for this specific purpose, which is you got federal money, it's more than what you have and you need to match it. So that's one of the reasons that the 1310s are held. But yeah, Brian, I wouldn't know that necessarily. I think ours is a unique situation from 2011. John Johnson, were you wanting to comment on that?
Well, I was going to say that we don't necessarily go to them for the type of requests that the Arts Board does, but we go to them for some federal things. And we also have a new statutory requirement 5 years ago for if we have federal plans tied to set-asides, we have to go to them. So we go to them more than we used to. I'll just put it that way. Yeah, I'll leave it there.
Okay, fair enough. To take you through the budget itself, the AIDS budget on the state side shows an increase to the Arts Challenge Initiative, a small increase, an increase to the Creation and Presentation Program. The numbers that you see in the Creative Communities Program are all the ones that you approved in May. So those are the dollars distribution that you did in May. The folk arts apprenticeships are the dollars again that we talked about in May. The other aids, for those who don't remember or haven't seen it before, is Arts Midwest. So our Arts Midwest dues is $36,400. The regranting program has not changed. It's still $116,007, and nor has the Woodland Indian Arts Initiative changed. It's in the statute at $24,900. That's true, by the way, of the regranting program as well. That amount is in the state statute. So our aid side is state aids for the arts, which we control as the agency, and then direct line items, which are the regranting program and the Woodland Indian Arts Initiative. On the federal side, there's an increase to the Creation and Presentation Program. Creative Communities Arts Education is directly locked. We got 32.3 from the NEA for arts education. We directly matched that 32.3. We said about the folk arts apprenticeships we talked about in May, and the $12,000 is our annual support of Arts Wisconsin's technical assistance programming, which balances out that plus the embedded in the operations is the Poetry Out Loud, gets us to that $87,100 number. On the operations side, the things that are reflected in the budget are actual costs for salary on the state side and fringe. We're still being optimists, as we always are. We still have $2,000 for the National Arts Action Summit, which happens in March. So with hope that I'll get to travel to that, it's still there. The telephone, the budget committee caught when we went to voice over IP. I said, oh, we don't have phone costs anymore. They said, oh, no, you have a cell phone. And yes, we do. So we have the cell phone costs there. Some contractual services. So some of the work that the state does on our behalf finds itself in that $1,800. Indirect costs. When we started this process, we had broken out the amounts between other administration and indirect costs. The Department of Administration has decided that it should all fall under indirect costs. Insurance, the state is self-insured, so that's the amount we pay to the state. And the unallocated is what we have in case we need to move some money around. On the federal side, and again, the salary is actual based on DOA's projection. And then travel, we're going to underspend this. So this will be a place to come back to as the year goes on. Clearly, we're not traveling at the speed at which we normally travel, nor are you as a board, nor are our panels, right? So while we have that money there as a placeholder to what we would call normal travel, it's unlikely we'll travel at that rate. The contractual services amount reflects things like the Smart Simple grant database, and it also reflects the 21.5 for the Arts and Economic Prosperity 6 study. While it reflects the entire amount, we will again, with need of flexibility, we can split that over a couple fiscal years. So it would be lovely to pay it all out at one time. But if we need flexibility based on how our budget is going, we can pay that arts and economic prosperity amount over 2 years. You will, later in this meeting, you will approve that, our participation in that project, but we've budgeted for it here. The subscription dues and memberships are dues in NASA, the National Assembly of State Arts Agencies, our dues for Americans for the Arts, and the American Folklore Society. So those three organizations. Again, the indirect costs are from DOA specifically. Printing, we don't do a whole lot of it anymore. Supplies, we don't have a great need. And then the unallotted is there again if we need it. One of the expenses that we're not showing here, but will be a part of all of this, is our computer expenses. Because DOA has decided that they will no longer service computers outside the warranty. And so we have to turn our computers over in order to continue that support. That's a lot to chew on for a moment. Any questions about all I've said so far? I will simply note that Poetry Out Loud is the other piece of all of this. It's $20,000. The difference in Poetry Out Loud going forward this year to last is we're going to pay our coordinator more this year. As she explained, and I think I explained in our last meeting, it started out as a school year project from September to May, but it's now a full year project. And so in that being the case, she deserves additional compensation. But it'll all be done within the amount of the $20,000 we get from the National Endowment. So, yeah, so I think I'll stop there for a second and again, see if there are any questions. We really appreciate the Budget Committee looking over this with us as we continue our dance with DOA to get everything right and on track.
As George,
Yes, sir.
speaking of DOA, have they weighed in on this at any level? Like make sure that we're, you know, it just struck me anytime you don't use money, like when you're talking about travel, does that come back to haunt us in the end or?
No, because as you see, the lion's share of travel is federal dollars. So if we were not to use it for some reason and we didn't have something else we needed to use it for, we could roll that forward. So that's not an issue at all.
Good.
So if there are no questions, then the
Take-
Budget Committee can certainly move this for the board's approval, and we can carry on with the conversation of the other pieces here.
Thank you, George, for your excellent presentation and for the preparation of the budget. On behalf of the committee, I would move that we accept the fiscal year 22 budget as presented.
Gerard Randall, second. Oops, sorry.
Go ahead.
Gerard seconds.
All right, any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed? Hearing none, motion carries. Excellent work, guys. Thank you.
All right, continuing with the budget conversation, two other pieces I wanted to, well, three actually. Three pieces I want to bring to your attention. One is you've got in your packet the project budget form for the American Rescue Plan. So the NEA needed to know how we were going to break out the dollars that we have for the rescue plan. And you saw here that the lion's share of it, as we said back in our last meeting, goes to grant making, to grantees. But we are keeping some dollars this time, which is different than what we did for CARES. We're keeping some money for both a limited term employee and also a paid graduate student from the Bowles Center for Arts Administration. So we're going to have a couple of extra sets of hands here. And we're excited for that opportunity, both in support of the rescue plan, but in the other work that we're trying to do. Karen, did you want to say something about all that? You seem to be leaning in. And then she
I'm leaning
disappeared.
in, trying to just get this darn connection to stay stable for a little bit, and know that you're having ongoing conversations right now about those extra hands.
Yep,
So probably more
indeed.
on that in December.
It's a perfect. Is Marie on our call here?
Yes, she is.
Marie, can you show your face, or are you only in a place for? There she is. Ladies and gentlemen, Marie Ackley, who is our extern from the UW Stevens Point. She joined us just recently. So I told you to welcome her in email, but there she is, so you can wave at her and say hello today. We're thrilled to have her on board.
Yeah.
All right. Very good.
George, can I ask what the LTE position is going to be overseeing?
Yeah, so it's the opportunity for two things. It's to be doing the work with the rescue plan. So we're going to have three pieces of what we're doing here. One of them is the grants that are going to mimic creation and presentation. The second is to make sure that we're funding organizations of color. So we're making sure that we're finding organizations that we might not have otherwise known about. And then the third piece is there are 22 counties which we are not in right now, that we do not give grants to. And so we're asking for help in researching those counties and finding an organization in each one that we can reach out to and support.
Which
So
Marie
it's that-
actually just did, which
That's
is
right.
awesome. She
Yeah.
did a treasure hunt through those 22 counties and found some new ones for us.
Right.
Thank
So
you, Marie.
yeah, so it's that kind of thing. But if the committees have areas of interest that they can let us know, so we can build it into the work plan of these folks, we'd be happy to do that.
Thank you.
Two more pieces, and I'll say the celebratory one first, and that is our Ms. Geschko has once again done an extraordinary job writing our next application to the National Endowment for the Arts. So we are going to be submitted to the endowment. Or did we hit send? Did we hit? It's coming.
We didn't hit it because I need your technical prowess in getting the landscape page attached to the profile pages of the first 11 pages of the application, George.
Well,
It's a
that's
technical thing.
exciting. That's exciting. However, the technical difficulties notwithstanding, the narrative is great. And so after we have submitted today, we'll get you a copy of it for your reading pleasure. And so we'll look forward to a good report from the endowment when they finally sit with it.
George, I'm just going to interject. I just had an opportunity to say this to a grant applicant of ours. As she said, "Oh, yay, grant proposal writing season, woohoo!" And I said, yes, a time to step back, take stock of all that you have accomplished, and articulate it concisely so that it can be celebrated by many.
Well said. And I will build upon that only to say, and with thanks to Caitlin and Dale for their input into the narrative as well.
And Marie as well. Thank
And Marie.
you all. George definitely is. Yep.
So that's and then the final thing we wanted to talk to you about is attached also with your book today, and that's the Shuttered Venue Operators Grants that the Small Business Administration has been giving. And I thought it was important that you see this for a couple of reasons. It's a significant investment in the arts in the state of Wisconsin. We're talking about $171,234,401. It's huge. What I did at the bottom of the spreadsheet is I broke it out for you so you could see the number of grants in the different budget size, or number of grants in the size of the grants, and then the total grants in that size category, and then the kinds of grants, so to live venue operators or live performing arts, etc. So I think this is important for two reasons. As I said, this is a huge investment that's being made in the arts and culture. but it also can be misconstrued as being the thing that's going to save the arts right now. Most definitely, it's helping the arts go from, oh my God, to, okay, now we can think about going forward. The challenge is in that going forward, because if the perception is the arts got all this money, and we did hear that in joint finance, if you recall, when they were taking up the arts board's budget, they got all this money, they don't really need this. Well, no, they got this money to stabilize and make themselves whole from a year and a half, 2 years of not having normal business. But going forward, and we've talked about this already a couple times, COVID willing, people will gather, but COVID may not be willing, and people may not be willing because they're afraid to be in a place with others. So I wanted to put that out there. And then I wanted Karen to talk about what she heard from the Presenters Network when she went to the Wisconsin Presenters meeting this past week.
Thank you, Mind Reader. Yeah, so Arts Midwest conference was this week virtually. And Wisconsin Presenters Network, as they are wont to do, decided to show great self-care, and they gathered in person at Whitewater, some of them, to participate virtually but together. So they had their own kind of thing going, and I was able to go on Monday and Tuesday. And the really interesting stuff, as you guys know about conferences, are what's being said in the room. And one of the pieces that I heard was that one of the major presenters is at even having projected numbers carefully for this fall, their ticket sale, their houses right now so far are at 1/3 of what they projected, and they were projecting in a very conservative way. So there's that. There's a lot of should we have reopened? Should we not have reopened? What is going to happen next? And very much what George said, I'll just underline, the money that we are receiving right now through CARES and through ARPA that's trickling from the federal or gushing from the federal is really critical for now. It is not for, like, we're not stockpiling huge amounts of money for, the next few years, and the next few years are still going to be dicey. And so my concern is within this next year, how many groups that we see at this CNP application deadline will we see next year? It's a real concern, and not just in the presenting world.
So a very good news, bad news situation, except that we need to be prepared. That's what I think the bottom line here is. We need to be able to talk about this in a way that celebrates the investment, but also says it's insufficient going forward. So yeah, John.
So just a quick note here. It is good news in terms of a lot of good money going into the arts. It seems like a lot of the big venues received big support. So in terms of the grants that we make, will we look at the institutions and the organizations that received large amounts of support from this? And as we look at grants, maybe try to make sure that we can spread some of what we do in funding?
Great.
Yeah, John, it's limited to, I think, the criteria was that if you received more than $200,000 in a shuttered venue grant, you were ineligible for this.
Okay.
And the priority was in those 20 or 22 counties we're not in. There were a certain set of criteria that we received that really stipulated what was important. And George did reach out to me as someone who received shuttered venue to ask how an organization that receives shuttered venue at the level we did, how we would feel about not being included in this. And I said, that's fine. There are organizations out there who desperately need this. And so
perfect.
I think the larger organizations are those who received larger shares of shuttered venue. We're all right now in a supplemental phase to where I'm under review for 356,000 more from shuttered venue. And so you're going to start seeing that coming down through the pike as well.
Thank you, Brian. Any questions about all of that additional budget committee information? So whether it's the rescue plan dollars, the shuttered venue, or the new NEA application, anything? Otherwise, we can carry on, Mr. Chair.
George, I did want to interject this with this fog money and this other stuff. It is like there has been 170 Wisconsin arts boards operating and making grants around the state in this time. That's how big that budget is compared to our current budget. More so, actually, because all of that money went to grants and none to computers and that kind of thing. So it's a huge shift that we'll still be figuring out, the impact of this over the next months, if not years. So just to put that out there too.
George,
That's
did
great.
I understand that we need to take action on the Americans for the Arts contract, or are we good?
We can do that at this time, or I was thinking we would also do it at the other old business.
Very
So
good.
That.
I believe that's our
Yep.
report, Kevin.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, John. Thank you, everyone, for the input. Let's move on to strategic planning. Miss Mary.
All right, coming at you with an update. We've been meeting pretty regularly since about May. I think May we met 2 times. I've been working with Bob Wagner, John Potter, Brian Kelsey, and with some heavy input from George and Karen. And then we've got some supportive players that I'll be talking about later on. We started off our process by understanding that we're planning in very challenging times. We can't possibly know what's coming up for us and for the arts groups and the artists around the state. But we started with the process with kind of looking backwards. Karen wasn't kind enough to share with me some of the materials that have been developed by the Arts Board over the years in their strategic planning process to sort of understand our history. But then in looking forward, we also looked at comparables, other arts boards from across the nation. So we looked at about 12 standouts and we divided them among the team. And then we got together to chat about what we really liked about them, what we didn't like, what we should really consider for our process. So I'm not going to go into the detail. We did do a lot of detail in our discussion about what we liked, right down to the skinny definition of terms, how the layouts, the looks of them. I'm not going to bore you with that right now, but just understand that a lot of folks are out there planning for the context of our times, that we're living through COVID recovery. The idea that we want to be very inclusive. We want to look primarily at setting goals around building and bolstering the creative economy. We've been referring to it as a creative sector. We also want to consider sort of the social justice revolution that's going on out there and how the arts can be a part of that. There's wonderful stuff going on. There's a lot of mindfulness that we want to really tap into. We also want to be inclusive and transparent in our process. We want to include, others in the decision-making process, reviewing our goals with us. So we're going to be holding sessions around the state. And I'll talk about the areas in a moment, but we understand also that our goals have been pretty solid historically, that we want to stick with those. We want to use graphics. We want to be multimedia, for example, be using online and print. And then we also want to take advantage of the fact that this is the 50th anniversary of the Arts Board, and we've done some pretty wonderful things over the half century that we've been around. So we want to leverage that and take advantage of it. So in creating our set of strategic goals, they are as follows. We want to differentiate the Arts Board from other arts groups from around the state. We want to talk about that, especially during our town halls and focus groups, to understand where we are, where we stand, and how we're perceived out in our, among our friends and peers. We want to set the priorities for the arts boards as the creative sector, as I talked about, accessibility, the social justice piece. We want to continue on with our education for all agenda. We want to also look at creative aging. We also want to look at the Arts Board as sort of a convening force for the arts across the state, looking at how we can continue this process of bolstering partnership and continuing the process of listening to what's going on, so we can be more of an advocate, more of a stronger player. So we decided that we would be holding both virtual and in-person groups in consideration of the fact that we don't really know what's going to be happening health-wise around the state and with CDC regulations. But here is our rundown. We'll be holding our listening sessions between November and January. So November's window looks like Milwaukee, Appleton, La Crosse, Wausau, and Eau Claire. December, we'll be holding virtual sessions for the Madison Arts Organizations groups. We'll be including businesses, political leaders as well in our groups. We also have January slated for the northern region, which I'm not sure about timing on that. We're going to be entering deep frost by that time, but heading into Superior and Washburn counties. So that's where we're going with this. But we also want to include an element of listening to our kind staff at the Arts Board. You have been working so hard. You've gone through a move. You've done all these incredible things with such a tight budget. So we want to talk with you. We want to hold some interviews with our Fearless Arts Board during the annual meeting and include some of that good stuff in both of our graphics, as well as some pieces, excerpts from the interviews online. I think that would be really helpful. So I've said enough here. We do have some pieces included in this packet that we'd love your input on. That includes the invitation to participate in our town halls and focus groups, but we've also included the question guide, and that's kind of broken out by headings. We'd love it if you can take a few moments and maybe send me and the planning committee your feedback. So at the same time that we're gathering this external data, we'll be working at visualizing our impact over the 50 years. And we have also reached out to Jennifer Schwarzkopf on our board, who will be helping us out. So Jennifer, do you want to say a few words about what you have planned for us to help us visualize that?
Sure. And can you guys hear me okay? In a parking garage right now. Okay. So essentially, Mary and I had a great meeting yesterday, just touching up on exactly what we're looking for in terms of graphic presentations. And of course, my paper is not handy right now, but the first thing I'm going to do, we do a graphic of the state and show different percentages in terms of percent people served, programs were funded.
So Jen, we're not getting your great report. Unfortunately, you're being pixelated in the parking garage. So if you can get somewhere where we can hear you, we don't want to miss it.
Heard. Give me 2 minutes.
Okay.
In the meantime, I want to recognize Dale from the team, who is also going to be helping us out by rolling up and pulling data on impact over the last 50 years, if we can go back that far. If we can't go back that far, Karen and I have talked about, maybe showing impact over the last 25 to 30 to 40 years. But that's something that we want to be visualizing as well.
Yeah, it's interesting to be doing a strategic planning thing in a time of pandemic, looking at the next 3 years, knowing that there's uncertainty is the main theme. So flexibility and pirouetting are going to be high on the list. But also, I think interesting to then embed within that the 50th anniversary. And what I really appreciate about the strategic planning committee's approach from a staff's point of view is that you are continuing that outside in thinking instead of inside out thinking when it comes to the planning. It's not what the Arts Board thinks and y'all out there just kind of rubber stamp it. It's what do you out there in these communities that we are missioned to serve and want to serve, what are you thinking and how does that inform the work that we have in front of us? So thank you for that.
Yeah, it's great work. And I want to make sure that we honor that work. Do you have a deadline you'd like our input by? I know I need one and I want to make sure you folks all stay on track because I think this is a great plan.
I think gathering your feedback actually throughout October would be a really good idea, because this committee is not slated to meet in October. We're actually giving ourselves a bit of a break. And of course, Brian has to prepare for jury duty, so we don't want to bog him down too much. But if we could gather your feedback and incorporate that during October, that would be great. So I would slate try to maybe the first 2 weeks of October would be wonderful. And we do appreciate it.
Right, that's totally doable. I appreciate that. But again, this is to echo Karen's statements, yeah, that outside in thinking, that's perfect for us. I mean, that's what we're here for. And it'll be a challenge, some of these meetings, with the COVID piece, but I still, if we can take COVID out of it in the plan, I think this is great. And it's a good way for us also to start to interact with our constituents after a bit of a pause, right, quite frankly. So good work, and thank you for keeping this going, because I do think this is it's a good plan.
And Jennifer has emerged from the parking garage, so we can hear her report now.
Hi, sorry about that. It's almost lunchtime, so I gotta get the restaurant rolling. So I heard a little bit of that, but essentially the visual representations, one of the items Mary and I discussed was doing a timeline of the arts board and major milestones or changes, or also including how, maybe the structure of the organization has changed over the years. Another thing that she pointed out, which I thought was a great idea, was also including some of the major projects that we funded and showing imagery of that. I think a lot of time our work is very nebulous and people can't quite put projects to all the work that we're doing behind the scenes. It would be a nice celebration of all the interesting projects and show a lot of the art we've been able to bring to the state. And the other main imagery that we were talking about, and Mary, this is where somehow between my house and right now, I have lost my piece of paper with notes. So I might need your help on some of the bullets, but we were talking about doing an image of the state and breaking the state up into certain regions, which we wanted to discuss with you guys to see your opinions on how you think we should recommend or how we should break it up, but essentially showing number of projects funded and, number of people reached with the funding through these projects, etc. So Mary, can you follow up on those bullet points we were talking about illustrating in that image? Thank you.
Yeah, so that's kind of a continuation on the theme of what we were talking about as a strategic planning committee. We're discussing the fact that the Arts Board does so much that's kind of unrecognized or not really attributed to the organization or the agency. So what we want to talk about are creating a set of measurable goals. Everything that we identify moving forward should have some type of ability, or should give us an ability to report on the number of people that we're serving, the types of projects that we're funding, number of adults served, number of children served, or youth served, just to give some type of measure of impact. So that's essentially what we want to go back as far as we can with Dale's help and with George and Karen's help as well, to kind of reconstruct that, but then also to be mindful of the fact that we need to set very measurable and reportable goals for the future.
Great.
So a lot of that content, I'll be reaching out to Dale as well as the staff at WAB to get some information, the data information from the team in terms of images and key milestones to start.
Yep. Any questions for the committee? All right.
I'd like to recognize the outstanding work that Mary and Karen have done on this. Thank you so much.
Yep.
Thank you. And the committee as a whole, this has truly been a team effort. I so appreciate it.
Good deal. External relations, our friend, Mr. Kelsey.
I don't have the most illustrious report. I've been working with strategic planning in the time that I have not been trying to run a theater during a pandemic. But George and I have, and Karen have shared articles and various information on the 50th anniversary. But taking a step back, I know the first agenda item is this alumni group, and I don't see anything standing in our way. I just think it needs to be formalized as to what we anticipate the alumni group's responsibilities would be, and then reaching out to these former board members so that we can engage them and keep them moving forward. People like Mary, who's been, still engaged in the external relations side, and other individuals who have a lot still to offer to us, yet we're not asking, because I don't think we really know what we are asking of them. But as we approach the 50th, I think we may have more to ask of them, and then to regulate it more in a sense of just having them meet. What do we expect from them? When would they meet? What would they be? Is it like a national advisory council? What is their role in bringing us topics that they're seeing, and a sense of reporting structure? George, do you have more on that than that?
Yeah, I mean, we can surface two things for this discussion. One of them is the notes we got from Indiana and their work in this space. But we also got from Mary Gilo the work that they have done at the Wisconsin Humanities to engage their alumni board members. And so Mary was very key to that instigation with the Humanities Council, and then the creation of that alumni group there. So we've got those materials as well. So as we structure our own, we've got some good things to lean on.
Yeah, I just think now that my season's closed, I will have more time. Hopefully I won't be called for jury duty. I am leaving tomorrow for 3 weeks to go to Canada to get out of here and go have a vacation. But when I get back, I will be looking forward to looking more deeply at some of this stuff, George.
No worries. I look forward to it.
And then the 50th anniversary, you hear the Strategic Planning Committee is putting together some of the documentation that'll help us, that can be used by the External Relations Committee, as to how do we effectively communicate the 50 years the Wisconsin Arts Board has been around, the impact that is being made. I think that goes hand in hand with what our strategic planning is, and the external relations, which is simply the communication of what the Arts Board has done, and to see if there's initiatives that we can undertake. I think we're going to need to figure out what 2022 looks like before we start planning anything big and major. But I think there's way within communities that we can engage folks, and especially as we talk about the successes the Wisconsin Arts Board has had community to community. It's simply an opportunity to elevate the message of the Arts Board, and ultimately the messages we're going to pull out of the strategic planning of how we're different from any other arts group in the state, and why we're critical. And I just really see the External Relations Committee as being the mouthpiece of what's happening, and making sure that we're reaching all the stakeholders, whether they're grant recipients, whether they're legislators, whether they're just members of the public, or they're corporations who rely on the creative industries and creative communities. That's what I got, George.
Okay. And just as a heads up, at 11:15, we'll be joined by Karen Wolfe from the Madison Arts Commission. But before that, we have the opportunity for you to share what's going on in your regional area. So if people would like to report out, Mr. Chair, you can call on them and can make that happen.
Yeah, let's do just like we do when we do roll call. And again, let's keep it to 2 minutes each, and that should get us to our guest.
Okay, very good.
I'll kick it off right off the get-go. The big news here in Eau Claire is the fact that a major funder stepped up, and you just listening to all the talk about what it's like to run an arts organization in a pandemic when it's tough to have audiences. There are people giving us hope, and a couple gave, $2 million to the Confluence. So, and a chunk of change to the university arts program as well. So those stories from day to day are critical, but it also, again, like why you're all serving on the arts board, a lot of it's to give hope and that there are people out there, still willing to give and know how important our arts and cultural scene here is important to our daily lives. So, I took a lot from that, the fact that there's not much happening as in a typical year, but people are still passionate and still wanting to give and to serve and keep it going. So as you all are. So that's my update here from Eau Claire. George, you want to shout them out?
Sure, we'll go on to Brian.
Sure, I can report from Door County. We just closed our 86th season. We had 8 weeks of performances. Normally we do 18 weeks. We had scaled back and we had limited capacity. We had 2 seats empty on each side of every party, on to their left and to their right, and no one in front, no one behind. So to provide socially distanced seating, I budgeted for 150 seats a night. We ended up selling 200 seats a night. So we surpassed our budget by just shy of $100,000 from what we had anticipated to bring in revenue wise. We received endless praise for how safely we did it, how we never wavered, even when things looked more positive in July than they do today. We didn't make a single change. As soon as we started selling tickets, we locked in and said, we will not change, because this is the promise that we made to people. So we never once had to update our health and safety plan to the public. It was, this is what we're rolling out, this is what we're doing. And we've received donations from people who attended both shows who just said, thank you. You gave us the ability to attend things and to do it safely, and you never wavered from what it was. And we're rewarding you with this check. And so it was really nice. We had very little pushback from people. We had those who were like, I don't need to be social distanced. And we said, it's not your choice. This is what we're doing. And ultimately, I will put it down as a big success that, September 19th was my goal to get to, that no one was sick, and we got it and we made it through it. And I thanked the staff profusely because, they had to be masked. They needed to be checking in on an app every single day, telling me that they were not sick. They needed to be PCR tested. If they had a guest coming in, they needed to show up with a PCR test. So it was stressful, but it's done and it was successful. I know Northern Sky Theater had a somewhat good outdoor season. I know it started better than how it ended for them. Their indoor season, they're doing 50% capacity, masked, and now they're saying that you need to prove vaccination, but I think you only have to check a box. They're not checking you as you come in. Third Avenue Playhouse is opening. Finally, they've had some controversy. Their artistic team is gone and they are replacing their artistic team. So Bob and James are no longer at Third Avenue Playhouse. And they've had about 40 applicants for the artistic director role. They have their opening show in their new space, running the first 3.5 weeks of October, maybe 4 weeks of October. So I have tickets to go and see that. I know Birch Creek had a good season outdoors, everything they budgeted. They did everything outdoors. And if they had to move indoors due to weather, they had limited, you had to have a certain price ticket to be able to actually see the show. So it worked for them. I think the last meeting we had at Peninsula Arts and Humanities Alliance was hearing everyone becoming very strict about saying, now we are moving to a point where you must have proof of vaccination. So we were hoping to try to do something across Wisconsin, Door County cultural institutions so that it became uniform. But I think different board members, different organizations, it just wasn't possible, similar to what you saw across Madison, Milwaukee, Chicago. So it's coming across a little bit differently. I know Third Avenue Playhouse, you will need to show your vaccination card and your ID or a negative PCR test to even get inside their door. Northern Sky is not doing that. Nor is Door Community Auditorium, but Peninsula School of Art and Right On Door County have all started switching things. So you're starting to see stricter measures come into play. But everyone was very thankful for the summer season. If you even got anywhere near Door County, you understood that we probably broke all records with very few staff and very stressed out business owners because of no J1 students. So I think everyone is hoping for some sense of a quieter time, but it's not letting up. So we shall see.
Thank you, Brian. Matt, you had anything to report?
Thanks, George. Here, I'll take my mask off for a sec. So in Madison, we have a mask order. I think we're probably one of the few counties in Wisconsin, maybe the only one, that currently has a face covering order. It originally went into effect in August, I think through September 10th. The first order did not have any exemptions for any performing arts. There was a very strong lobbying effort. And the newest order that came out a couple weeks ago now does, including, I'm looking at the order here, when actively playing a wind instrument that has a fabric bell cover. And then the big one, which is while presenting or performing artistic, cultural, musical, theatrical, or any other type of presentation for an audience, as long as everybody's vaccinated for at least 2 weeks and everybody is masked. So I went to a performance at the Orchestra Center last week, and it was seamless. Everyone was ready with either their Vax card, or you can bring up your vaccination status on the Wisconsin Immunization Registry, and they just look at it quick, and lines weren't long or anything. It was very, very seamless and had a packed house. So just a quick update in COVID world as it relates to the yards.
Thank you, Matt. Karen Ann.
My pleasure. So I think, as you all know, my big thing is Native art and Native art in public places. So I'm very proud to invite everyone here as you're traveling from Wapaka, Wisconsin on Highway 54 east towards Stevens Point. I want you all to stop by this amazing barn mural done by Christopher Sweet of the Ho-Chunk Nation. It's an incredible mural at a huge scale in a public place, accompanied by a poem written by past poet laureate Denise Sweet, specifically for this installation. So a few months ago, I did a survey for Living Traditions Network to see what it was that Native artists were most interested in during these COVID times. And the resounding answer came back from the artists: work. We want to work. And so Highway 54 West, between Wapaka and Stevens Point, take a look at this amazing mural. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you, Karen Ann. John Johnson.
I can report a couple things from statewide as well as in Madison. For youth arts, we have a new youth arts center, which is across the street from Lapham Elementary on the near east side of Madison, and is a center for Madison Choir, which is boys and girls youth choir. They have dance for youth in there. They have youth theater, children's theater. Madison is in there. It's a state-of-the-art facility, and now is proposed, and I think people know about the Wisconsin Youth Symphony Orchestra is proposing literally around the corner their own facility. And the Frauci family are very much people supporting this monetarily, both buildings. And so that WISO building could be approved and start construction within the next year, which would then put a whole youth arts center for the whole city, and all, actually really it's Dane County and farther. I know I was a WISO parent for 2 kids, and students come in from 100 miles away to be part of the youth symphony orchestras there. So it's pretty cool. At the DPI, our arts and creativity education consultant, and education consultants are experts in different content areas. So we have one of them. That's all we have position authority for. That person left, and so we'll be posting a vacancy for that within the next month, which will be a statewide search for this civil service position. Arts and creativity covers the content areas of music, dance, art and design, and theater. And so So and this would be somebody who has K-12 experience, obviously, and can also speak to educator prep programs in those areas and licensure in those areas. So that will be a statewide search.
Very good. I think in respect for Karen's time, we'll have Karen do her report, and then we'll pick up with Leah just as soon as we're done with that. Okay. So Karen Wolfe is here with us today. You all received the wonderful book, Let's Talk About It. Karen was very instrumental in all the work that went around the murals. And I just thought it would be great to have her come talk to you today about what's happened since the murals came down and the book went out. And to give you the opportunity to say thank you to her directly. Karen, up to you.
Thank you. Thank you, George, for inviting me, and good to see all of you here today. I just got back from New York City, which is reopening. The arts are reopening. I won the lottery to get to Merry Wives at Central Park, which was on the bucket list and very exciting. And people are just taking such amazing precautions. Every place you go, they check your government ID against your Vax card. So you know that everybody in that restaurant, in that museum, you don't get in unless you produce those two things, it does build audience confidence. I'll tell you that. Even though there's breakthroughs, I felt a lot better going in places knowing every single person had been checked in that way. So, and I'm back, and I have today off to join you. And I just wanted to tell you a little bit about what's happened since last summer, when 75 businesses on State Street were damaged due to civil unrest, and everybody boarded up whether their business was damaged or not. So we had a half-a-mile street that looked very tragic, and it was tragic. Of course, the members of the business community and the council wanted to do something to improve that situation. And so we took a huge risk, as you know, and we basically opened up the street as a forum of expression, which, was a very, very scary thing to do because anybody could have said almost anything. The only restrictions were still imposed by our sign code, which said no advertising and no profanity and no nudity. But other than that, I just had to cross my fingers and hope people use the opportunity to increase communication and not, break it down. And I survived it. It was actually the hardest project of my career in the arts. And I've been in the arts since I was in my early 20s. Because the emotions and the tensions and the risk was so high, it was incredibly challenging, that and not getting any sleep for 2 weeks. So the boards were up, and then we only did that project for 2 weeks. And then, our anticipation going in would be that things would return to normal. But as you all know, they didn't return to normal. There was different little waves of unrest, and there was concern around the election and what would that bring. And so the business property owners just were not comfortable taking those boards down for months and months. And that became a big issue for everyone who, wanted to move past that period and bring back customers and retail. But there was this confusion. So for months, the boards stayed up on State Street. And they looked bad, and they were not meant to be permanent pieces, and the boards were taking on moisture and getting levels and levels of continual dialogue written on them. So it started to look very bad. And then the pressure was sort of the opposite, is can you get that property owner to get those boards down? And, at some point the city had to start enforcing graffiti rules again and ticketing people. And we didn't want to ticket people who had already been through so much. So it was quite a lot of drama over boards. And as I collected as many of the boards as possible, whether they were pieces that the city directly commissioned, or if they were just spontaneously marked on by people in the community. And right now, those boards have all had condition assessments done. by a conservator, and I kind of know what pieces I have. There are very few intact murals because the boards were sort of cut to fit this window and this opening and this door. They came down in pieces. A lot of the pieces were lost. So I don't really have a lot of completely intact murals. And that's why the book was so important, because I knew people would be kind of clamoring for the memory of it, the piece of it, and that we wouldn't have a good product. During those 2 weeks of the project, I got 1,500 people emailing me, you know what you should do with those boards when this is done? You should do this, you should do that, you should do the other thing. 1,500. So the demand is high, and there may only be one or two surviving completely intact, not destroyed pieces. So I knew I wouldn't be able to meet the demand. So American Family coming through and offering to create this book really was a lifesaver to me in terms of getting people kind of giving me enough space and time. So anyway, now we sit with this near, we have what we're going to have. There's not going to be other murals that probably materialize going forward. And they're all in storage, and I know the condition of them. And so I've prepared individual condition reports, and I'm requesting meetings with the artists who participated so that they can be the first to know the condition of their mural. It may be the news, we weren't able to get any of your mural. It's gone. We don't know what happened to it. We can't find what happened to it. And, we just wanted you to be the first to know. Or it may be, we have your mural. It needs a little work. It's looking rough around the edges, but we have it. And, and just giving that artist the opportunity to know first the fate of their artwork. And then also using that as an opportunity to ask them what they would like. I can show them the results of this 1,500 person survey and say, this is what the majority of people wanted. They think it's an important project. They want it preserved. Most people want it someplace out in the community where it still lives. And I can show them that and kind of get their input on what the future of that piece will be. And then the final piece that I'm very curious about is to ask them what opportunities have come to them as a result of participating in this project. One of the things I could have never imagined when I was given the orders to make State Street better immediately was that this was a business incubator project, that by investing these very small amounts of funding into these artists, it launched many arts careers. There are many artists that were able to survive the pandemic from their artwork because they were asked to do other murals and had other opportunities. And that data hasn't been collected. We attempted to collect it, but these artists are not, none of them responded to a survey. So I'm hoping that by setting up these individual meetings and by collecting that data myself manually as they report it, I'll have something to show to policymakers as they make funding decisions, because I believe that this was an incredible return on investment in terms of, here's $1,000 for a mural, and then this person is able to continue in that art career. So that's sort of the status of where we are right now. I'm planning on doing those interviews fall into winter, and then hopefully placing some pieces in the community in spring. That may be optimistic. I'm anticipating that process is going to be a little challenging, as some people are disappointed, or some people will say, well, that art, you should have sold that piece and given the profit to the artist, or, there's going to be drama. But I'm hoping I set it up well enough that, when they try to poke holes in it, it stands up to the test. So that's my report, but I'd be happy to answer any questions if any of you have any about these pieces.
The book was remarkable. So thank you very much for sharing that. I'm at Peninsula Players Theater in Door County, and our company comes from Chicago, all over the place, and the East Coast. And it was a book that I did share with the company, and they were all blown away that those who don't know much about Wisconsin or only know Madison as the UW-Madison
Right.
I think we're all pretty blown away at the response and the creative response, and that it was actually someone took the time to document it and to
Mhm.
create it in a format that was so beautiful and accessible. So thank you very much for the work you did on that.
Thank you. Yeah, we knew from I wasn't sure that the murals that were created on day one would be there on day two. I wasn't sure how volatile the response would be. And remarkably, they were. A lot of the vandalism came after they were up for a while. But I did hire a local photographer to document every night where they were, so that if they were damaged by the next morning, we would at least have in-process shots. It really was a continual dialogue out there on State Street. So we did get a lot of good documentation, but that wouldn't have meant anything if it weren't put in this beautiful format. I appreciate that.
Yeah, Karen, this is Karen, trying to stay connected, so not sharing video, but just wanted to articulate not only gratitude, but the fact that what you did was creating best practices in this realm, which is really new to so many communities. What you pulled off because of those sleepless nights and all of those hours and those 1,500 emails, et cetera, was an amazing baseline of how to do this right without completely losing your mind irrevocably. I mean, maybe losing it for little pieces and then pulling it back, right?
Right.
So thank
Thank
you.
you. Yeah, I said at the end of the 2 weeks that I now knew how to run a 2 week, like a 6.5 mile mural project, because it took every day of learning that practice. And then there were things I left out. So for instance, typically we would have run an application, and then there would have been a committee that vetted that and chose what artists to participate. And because this was an emergency response, and the Arts Commission wasn't even meeting at the time because of COVID, but because of all that, we did do things a bit differently. But one from the call, I couldn't. You can't put out a call for Black artists or Polish artists. You can't restrict a call like that in a public setting. So the call went out to artists who had been directly impacted by racialized violence. And interestingly, or maybe not interesting, predictably, I guess you would say, most of the people that have that claim are people of color. There are exceptions to that. There's a white woman whose brother was assaulted by police in Wyoming. He has a different father, he has a different race. And so there were lots of people that felt that impact and felt passionately about that applied, but the majority of people that applied were people of color, which really centered their voices in a moment that maybe needed to happen in Madison for people to understand what was going on. So that was wonderful. And then, I had to learn, I needed a mobile office. So I rented a U-Haul, and that became the paint storage, the everything. I could keep it right on State Street. And there's things that I learned along the way. By the end, I knew what I was doing, but it was a pretty, there was a lot that I was blessed to have, just 20 years of experience. It came in handy. The one thing that I did overlook that I think about how I would have done that differently is that what I didn't think about is that there is a population of people that lives on State Street or hangs out a lot on State Street. And they felt pretty invaded by both the protesters and the people that were causing trouble, and then the artists. I mean, their peaceful spot that they sleep there. And that was all disrupted for a very long time. And what I should have done early on is gotten 50, 100 sketchbooks and distributed them to people who live there already, so that they would have felt included. And maybe some of those people, their work may have risen to the level of getting a board or two. But I did not understand that I was ignoring a group of people, or I didn't understand that until it was too late to really do anything about it. But it did become a problem because some of the people that lived there were so resentful that they then damaged murals. And I, wish I wouldn't, have forgotten about them. But, you know, there were little glitches. It was a dangerous situation. I don't like putting artists in a situation like that, where not only COVID and State Street being sort of the epicenter of the spread, but, you know, there was still glass being broken and the conditions weren't prime for a public art project. But yeah, there's some interesting things that could be documented about this, you know, artist as part of an emergency response. And one thing I would like to know, and I just don't have the capacity to research it, is how much money did we save the city? Because during the 2 weeks that there were artists on State Street, there were no police and riot gear dispensing, pepper gas or anything. I mean, there was relative peace on State Street. The day we left, violence came back. But just think of 14 days of what that would have cost in overtime and in equipment and in, you know, I don't even know what that figure is, but I would like a little bit of credit for that figure. I mean, I think if people are talking about paying for, you know, not putting all of our investment in policing, but putting some of our investment in other places, I think it was a really effective project for the art to show how the arts can keep people civil and keep them talking and thinking and celebrating even. But I would need to figure out what that cost, you know, what we saved. So it cost about $80,000 to do that mural project. And what would that have been in policing for 2 weeks?
That's a good UW project, I think.
Yes.
For them to help you out with that.
Oh, yeah.
I will ask for that.
Was there any other questions or comments for Karen? I just wanted to note, Karen, you were talking about the economic value of what went on, but the social capital that was generated in this is huge, just huge. And you've commented on that as well. And I just think we need to put that in perspective, that this was really something, an investment of money, but of time and capital and of your personal well-being to make this happen. And so to all the artists and to you and to American Family for helping to document it, we say thanks.
Thank you.
And I would say not only us, but communities around the country, because I'll reiterate, this is a national model, how you handled that. So thank you for the reverb that will continue into the future for sure.
Thank you, Karen.
Mm.
All right. Well, we'll release you. You can certainly hang around, but we're going to carry on with the meeting then. Karen, thank you again for taking the time out today.
Thank you.
And we're going to join Leah Kolb out on the deck now. She's changed and gotten some sun. And we're going to continue the Arts Board member reports here, and then we'll circle to the ad hoc committee reports after that. So go for it, Leah.
Hey, thank you. It's good to see everybody. I came out here because the dog was whining, so he needed just to have a little bit of air. I think the biggest thing that's happening that I can think of in Madison is the Art Fair in the Square is back this weekend, and we'll be welcoming, you know, I don't know, hundreds of artists from around the country in a very hopefully COVID safe type of situation. So the museum staff has been kind of hard at work getting all of that up and running. And it'll be exciting to kind of see how we're able to handle that within a very different world. It's not only a big fundraiser for the museum, but it's also a really great kind of economic boost for the city. So I will hopefully be seeing folks there if you get a chance to come and visit.
Very good. And in our conversation with Epic, we certainly saw the result of their shopping at the Art Fair in the Square. And Karen gave them a wonderful suggestion that it'd be nice if they put the names of the artists near the pieces, because it's great to see all the work, but it'd be lovely to know the artists who did them.
That's a great suggestion.
Yeah. Susan Lipp, where did you go on my screen? There you are. You're up next.
Hi. I think it's interesting. I was going to ask Leah if people at the art fair will be masked. Do you know?
I don't think it's a requirement, and it's not something that the museum as a host, I think, can require since it's on city property. Is that or state? Does that? I'm not 100% sure. I don't think there are going to be requirements. I know that the staff is. I think it's going to be highly recommended, and I know that the staff are going to be predominantly in masks.
Thanks. I was just wondering because recently we were at Forward Theater where everybody had to prove their vaccinations and with IDs, and everybody must be masked there. Everybody at Wisconsin Chamber Orchestra had to be masked. Both groups actually had their logos printed on masks and gave them to everybody, which I thought was a really cool idea. It works, and it's something that if you've got a mask that says that group's name, people are going to wear it and they're going to feel good about wearing it. And they're not paper, they're reusable, so people will then have them for a long, long time. I thought it was interesting that Wisconsin Chamber Orchestra paid all of their musicians for the entire COVID and paid all of their staff the entire time. They've been working crazily to make sure that they had enough money to be able to do that. Madison Opera has also done the same thing. They've paid all of their staff. They've had a couple of events in person, but of course they also checked to make sure that, first of all, the opera audience is older. And so because they're older, they are going to be the first people that would have been fully vaccinated. And because they're in Madison, people were completely vaccinated. I don't think there even one person that I saw of all the board members and their spouses that had not been vaccinated. And I think that it's interesting, Madison Opera will be doing an in-person opera next month. Forward has already started, and the Wisconsin Chamber Orchestra is also, they're not doing their winter concerts until January, but Madison Symphony is working right away. So these are groups that will be that are in person, and of course they're all extraordinarily safe and caring about their audience as well as the people that are in the shows.
Susan, I just want to add on to that. For at the Players, the first 2 weeks we performed were in July, and this was before Delta took hold. So our employees, if they were working outdoors, it was up to them whether or not they masked. But when Delta started striking, we locked down, and all of our staff standing outdoors, we were all fully masked, and we got a lot of praise because it just set an example. And people would say, do I need to be masked? And we say, it's up to you. We're all front-facing employees, we're masked, and we're all fully vaccinated. So we just made it clear to people just to set kind of the precedent.
I think it's really important. At my company, Full Compass, we've met with our attorneys and met with their attorneys and met again with the attorneys to make sure that everything we were doing was going to be legal. But we did make set a precedent now that everybody must be vaccinated or they may not work for us anymore. We lost 2 people out of 174.
Thank you. Mr. Potter, up to you.
The Spirit of the St. Croix Art Festival will be held this weekend in Hudson's Lakefront Park. Masks will be encouraged. It'll feature 85 juried artists, as well as live music and food vendors, etc. It was canceled last year. 2 years ago, it attracted 10,000 people over 2 days. It's presented by the Phipps Center for the Arts and the Hudson Area Chamber of Commerce. I would just mention that in the Twin Cities, all major venues and most of the smaller ones are requiring masks as well as proof of vaccination or recent negative tests. So that does seem to be the norm.
So John, before we let you go, say something about the chainsaws. Are they silent? And what went on in Hudson?
I was going to say that too. Report on the Phipps roof.
Yeah, so Hudson was hard hit by something. It doesn't seem to be straight line winds, and it doesn't seem to be a tornado, but it's something in between. And the Phipps Center suffered some damage with the front entrance canopy being raised and flashing, being ripped off the roof. Most people are familiar with the library, which all the front windows were shattered by the beach house roof, which flew half a block in order to smash the windows there. So the downtown was hit pretty hard. It's remarkable. I've been looking out the window, seeing the city is now collecting the branches and limbs that we've set out on the boulevard, and it's been actually very efficient in getting things up and running. What I told George at the beginning of the week, a lot of restaurants were really concerned because it was a bad situation to begin with, and now they had to deal with this. But everybody seems to have pulled together great neighborly responses, kind of the best of small town. That's reminded us of why we live here. So really folks pulled together, did what they needed to do, and everybody responded very well. Thanks for asking.
Bet. Thank you. Mary Reinders, you're up next.
Thanks. I'm going to keep my camera off just because of my connection issues, kind of like what Karen's going through. But I just wanted to report that recently coming back from Summerfest, my husband and I went to 2 concerts. And Summerfest was pretty well attended, although it seemed like it wasn't quite as crowded as in the past. But they did require vaccination cards as well as, well, not as well as, but in lieu of the vaccination cards, they were also doing a clear COVID test within 72 hours of attending. And people seemed fine with that. Most of the people around us were wearing their masks. Even if you were vaccinated, you didn't have to. I do know from contacts at First Stage Children's Theater that they're taking a layered approach as well. And they've had a great turnout. So they've been requiring masks regardless of vaccination status for ages 12 and up, along with the COVID vaccination card confirmation. And now locally, when we go to events, for example, American Players Theater around us, any kind of public event, it doesn't seem like they're as keyed into the vaccination status card, but some of them, like American Players Theater, are asking that all, regardless of vaccination status, wear their masks. And then they're also doing the social distancing as well as the HVAC updates and the cleaning. So it kind of just depends, but it does seem like a lot of people are going out. They're really hungering for the arts. It's just wanting to do it in the safest possible format. But if you're really keyed into the arts, you're not opposed to showing a vaccination status card or a test or wearing a mask, based on what I've observed.
Great. Lynn Ritchie, you have the penultimate report. I just like to use that word every once in a while.
Thank you, George. So if you all were involved with when we came up to the central part of northern Wisconsin and visited Mary Burns's studio where she did the jacquard weaving. So her ancestral woman's exhibit was done at the warehouse, and it was held there for 6 days. I happened to have been there like the day before they closed, and they were pretty doggone happy. They ended up with about 50 people coming through at that point. So that was a really nice exhibit to have in the area, so that people could see that beautiful ancestral women's exhibit. I also was up in Bayfield and met Betty Sitbon, who had received a grant through the Chequamegon Bay Arts Council to do a summer arts youth program camp at her business. So it was very nice to talk to her and find out it was successful, and they had visiting artists, and it was all very well attended. So Lola's doing great. We just had our fundraiser, which was held and did very well. We got a nice amount of money in. We are moving forward. But all of the venues including Three Lakes Center for the Arts, you know, all of our programming, of course, is much fewer people attending to try to keep everybody safe. And so I was just at the Three Lakes Center for the Art and talking to Gay Sheffen, and they're not displeased with the amount of people they're getting, but it does hurt to have so many fewer people attend. But that's pretty much what's going on right around here.
Very good. And Bob Wagner, you get to bat cleanup.
Okay. Well, I think it was Mary mentioned Summerfest. The only thing I would add to that is that they were offering vaccination there upon entry or before entry, which I thought was a good idea. And the bribes seemed to be working too, $100 here, $100 there for getting a shot. Gathering on the Green was pushed back this year, and we didn't attend, but the friends attended and said that everybody was being cautious. Being an outdoor venue, they were not wearing masks, or most were not wearing masks to pick up staff, but people were seating themselves far apart. So that there's an honor system. Inside Milwaukee, a couple of friends had gigs, and they said that they were lightly attended, but there were people there, and everybody was masked up in the city. That's the huge difference. Waukesha County, Ozaukee County, the feeling is different. There isn't that fear overall. You go out to a restaurant in Waukesha, and nobody's wearing a mask. You go closer to the city, and it's being enforced, and people are being honorable about it. The small venues, there's several small venues that have opened in and outside the city, and they do seem to be drawing a few. The artists in Ozaukee County have had small attendance. There's a quilt museum there, and they had good attendance, but it wasn't a crowd at any time. People seem to be spacing themselves. So there's an air of caution. The closer to the city you get, the more so. And that's the life goes on.
Right. All right, Mr. Chair, we have gone around the horn, and it's back to you.
Life goes on. I like it. Speaking of life goes on, our ad hoc committee report. We have one, our access committee chair, Miss Leah.
Hi, back inside. Our committee's been meeting relatively frequently since the summer started, which has been really great. And we have we now, I don't know, I can't remember the last time I reported if we had our advisory committee kind of up and running, but we have a small but mighty advisory committee who's helping sort of guide us forward in terms of thinking through accessibility and ways to address that within the context of the Wisconsin Arts Board. Our current focus is really thinking about the website, and I know that there are limitations with this in terms of the website being hosted by a government contract and all of that, which George kind of explained, but we're thinking, we have like a subcommittee that's been meeting to think about ways, maybe potentially easy fixes that we could do that would make the website more not only ADA compliant, but also more in line with sort of the idea of service and accessibility in the broader sense. So we're hoping that we're going to make some progress with that. come up with like some shorter term, easily implementable goals, and then something that we could present as a bit more of a longer term, big picture change, whether that happens, if that happens, if it could happen, something along those lines. So it's been a little bit demanding on some of the committee members. So I thank you all for being so willing to meet as you can. And we're also continuing to look at the strategic plan for accessibility. And I was able to meet with Jason Belangi from Access to Independence, and also and so he said that he would kind of take a look at the current kind of where the current strategic plan is, and maybe give us some guidelines and advice without doing like a full kind of rehashing of it. So I think that'll be helpful as well.
Leah, it might be helpful to have, I don't know if George or Karen or Caitlin or Dale can put you in touch with someone at the DNR, is to try to get data out of Peninsula State Park's new tower, which opened up fully accessible with a large wheelchair ramp that goes up through the trees so people can walk it or use mobility. But just to see how it's being used and whatnot. So as building case studies for organizations to say, hey, this is what they did. And so this is how many people were impacted, X, Y, and Z, because I think sometimes numbers speak louder than, or testimonials. It'd be great if, I hope they're at the park at, with the DNR at Peninsula State Park, gathering testimonials of individuals with accessibility needs, who have now had the opportunity to go up the ramp and get all the way up to the upper view. So I just think anywhere we can get that. And then another organization you might take a closer look at as they work through this is the Milwaukee Rep, as they start to gut their building. As they start looking at their plan for this huge remodel that they're going to do with a better eye towards accessibility. There might be some great examples right there in Milwaukee.
Thank you. How do you think the best way to kind of communicate those things, like what I think we're also trying to figure out sort of how to get the word out about these developments?
You can work, external relations is things that we can talk about as we reach back out to organizations, especially create, the CMP grants, creation and presentation. Maybe we have a better section on it, and it's not a scored section. It's simply a section to say, please describe your, how your facility is accessible. You are not graded on this. We are simply gathering information. So as we move forward, it might be something to work with Karen on. So then we're gathering testimonials and information, and I guess then we're able to communicate it on our website. We can have a toolkit for organizations who are saying, listen, we're trying to get our board to better understand the need to upgrade our facilities to handle this. Do you have any insight or any other organization, so that we can become that resource of redirecting folks to have those conversations. And it might be something ultimately that the Wisconsin Arts Board can pull together, whether it's through the Department of Tourism's DEAI committee, or just one of the meetings that we have. We reach out to those organizations that want to sign up for an accessibility one and say, tell us what's worked, what hasn't worked. It just might be something that ultimately pans out, and it actually is the thing that provides the spark in someone's mind, like, oh my God, our picnic tables aren't accessible, or I need to, I constantly have to look at Peninsula players because we're in the woods. What can I do to make this more accessible? And so when we rebuilt our theater, we made sure that there was handicap accessible restrooms. Our staff, if we see someone in a wheelchair, we go up to them and approach them and make it proactive, so as not to embarrass them to come and say, where can I go to the bathroom? That we explain where things are, and hey, there's this table here that's reserved only for folks with scooters, wheelchairs, etc., so that they've got a place to sit in the beer garden and experience the relaxation just like any other patron.
Okay. Yeah, no, that's right. I might reach out to you and have a longer conversation. That's great. Thank you.
And Leah, I just wanted to publicly thank you and the Access Committee. I haven't been able to be a part of the last one or two meetings. As Brian was talking, I also thought maybe instead of on the application, I'll keep this short because I know we've got a lot of other stuff to talk about, we could do a SurveyMonkey piece and just get that apart from funding, right? So it isn't tied to that necessarily. But also then, Leah, one of the things that came out of the Access Committee's work for me is connecting to the Madison festivals, how to make your festival really accessible webinar that they did just for the Madison one. That's such critical information that to put that out and make that accessible to other festivals around the state. So thinking about how to make that live on the website or something, or integrating it into an accessibility workshop that we do at some point down the road. Those are the kinds of things I've been thinking about. So thanks for
Karen.
We had a good conversation. Wendy Wheeler and I had a good conversation with Jason Belangi, and he was saying that they're coming up with not only for like the streetery guide, also like the accessibility for events and other sorts of sort of guides that they're putting together and they would be willing to share with the Arts Board. So we're going to have a continued dialogue about that and hopefully thinking about how to get that up on the website as well. So yeah, thank you for reminding me about that.
Karen, the only reason I said about the CNP is if you send me a SurveyMonkey, I'm less likely to complete it than if it's a required field within the grant application that is blatantly stated, this is unscored. But before you can hit the submit button, this section must be completed. Then the grant writer is going to go to their managing director or to their facilities maintenance and ask the questions and say, I have to put this in here. It's not an option. So that's the, if we really want the information, you almost need to like force it versus saying, yeah, we'd really like SurveyMonkey do this. And then they don't.
So Brian, that's actually an easy fix because we asked that question already within the application. You have to check the boxes. So what we could do is just make required and what else are you doing instead of making that optional.
Yes.
So they have to fill that out. That's
please explain how you're please explain how your facility is accessible.
Beyond the check boxes that you just.
Exactly. Beyond the physical things, because people will forget that in theater, if we need to get ASL, we will make all the phone calls to find the ASL person. It's just simply not the physical presence, the physical building. It is the barrier of, we make sure that if someone reaches out and says that they are deaf, we will make sure they get a script before they attend the show. It's those things that, we'll do because they'll say, I don't need an ASL. Can you send me a script in advance? Absolutely. Read the play, come and see the play. So.
Great. Thank you, Leah.
Yep.
And committee.
Leah, you can tell that it's an important topic. So strikes a chord. So thanks for sharing that with us. Karen, let's jump to you in the program updates, starting with the Wisconsin Arts Rescue Plan grants.
Okay, so Dale, you can feel free to jump in here with your thoughts on how the technical assistance for these applicants is going so far from your perspective. But the WARP grant, the Wisconsin Arts Rescue Program grant, is due on October 14th. And already, as of yesterday, I believe we had 42 applicants with a total request of about $208,000. So, the early adopters are coming in and making it happen. And it's certainly taking a fair amount of time to get folks registered. And that's on Dale. Thank you, Dale. And then asking basic eligibility questions, like if I'm embedded within a university as the PAC, am I eligible? If I'm embedded in a K through 12 public school as a performing arts center, am I eligible? And so there've been some yeses and nos as we've gone through, but it's articulating the rationale with and for some of those folks that makes life exciting and is a good investment of what turns out to be a fair amount of time. So that's what we're doing on that. And then we on purpose added it into the same grant deadline as creation and presentation, knowing that those who were applying to CNP in many cases would also be applying for a WARP grant. And so if you're doing both, you have the option of just checking this box and not having to give and not having to give a narrative. So saving some time and making that kind of a perk of applying to CNP, I guess.
By the way, Karen, what is that deadline?
October 14th.
Thank you.
Dale, anything to add on the WARP grant program, how it's going, all that good stuff?
Well, we're up to 46 now, and I expect it will accelerate as we go into the next few weeks.
Great. Well, you're putting a lot of time and very patient work into that, and bringing lots of people into the Smart Simple program that haven't been in there before. So, and many of them are looking at going now, what about the CNP application? Does this make sense? So it makes sense for some of them. We may have some new applicants. For some of them, it does not make sense. And so we are really helping people focus on the art at the heart of the mission piece for both of those grants. And that's it from me.
And yet you're back with creation and presentation if there's something you want to add.
Not much. People are coming in. I'm actually, Dale, I will tap on you to see if anyone has actually submitted a CNP full or interim year application. Do you know at this point?
We did.
Oh, Brian, early at
Well, it's because Danny has accepted a job as a at the Milwaukee rep. And so before she left, she's done at the end of this month, and she submitted ours. So ours should be fully submitted. Dale, if it's not, tell me, because I can hunt her down.
Oh my goodness.
There's a handful of interim applications that have come in. I'd say maybe 8 or 10 so far. And I think there's even 1 or 2 full applications that have arrived. So they're starting to come in.
All righty. Thank you. Yeah, that's it for me.
You're on mute, Mr. Chair. You're on mute.
Can we do that in live meetings too when we go back to in person? Sorry.
Yeah. Moving on with our friend Karen Ann and Caitlin, Woodland Indian Arts Initiative.
Well, what a great opportunity to talk to everybody. So yeah, I've been working with Caitlin, or more properly, Caitlin has been doing the work and looping me. And I was really grateful, Caitlin, for everything that you do. One shared goal that she and I have is to broaden both the range of applicants and the range of panelists. And so we've reached out to several new folks, and I think the response has been pretty goddamn positive. So I'm very much looking forward to seeing the applications and running this panel come mid-November. Caitlin, I don't mean to step on your tongue, but I do want to give you all honor and appreciation for everything that you do here. So thank you.
Thank you, Karen Ann.
For sure.
Yeah, we have 3 panelists committed, and I'm looking forward to working with them. It's like we mentioned earlier, that November 18th panel date. It's an October 28th application deadline. So pretty, standard with the Woodland Indian Arts kind of timeline we usually operate on, with the addition of some, standard COVID era questions. So the kind of how are you doing and how have you been doing since March 2020. Wow. Is there a sort of backup plan that you have in place if this activity that you've proposed isn't feasible in the shape that you've applied for? So yeah, we're moving ahead, and I've been checking in with regular applicants and trying to do, some outreach to potential new applicants. So that's been great, and Karen Ann is always helpful there. So thanks right back at you, but we are moving ahead and in good shape to have our panelists and panel chair secured at this point.
All right. We're up to old business, Mr. Chair.
Old business. That was my nickname in college. Old. As far as my chairman's report, it's going to be pretty brief, and I'm chomping on the bit to get to work on something that George won't let me talk about. So, but the topic that's near and dear to my heart, economic development. But hopefully we'll have something, maybe possibly in December to share. But right now it's not appropriate. So you know how I love to share inappropriate things, but I can't in this regard. But
I mean, you can't say A without saying B, so never say A if you can't say B.
I know it. It's the worst story ever. So I'm gonna turn it over to our executive director, who's got a slew of things that he needs to share with us. And let's hear from George.
No, I don't. I just list them out for me to remember, and just in case I'd like to do any of those. So two board-related things that you should know about. You are on the hook again for doing records training. I'm assuming that John Johnson and Matt Wallach have already done that because of their state service. But if you haven't done it already, you need to do that. And so I will, after this meeting, send you a link to that.
George, does mine, because I got it through I got it through Chelsea, and it's going to transfer over. Yeah.
Yeah, as long as you
okay,
get
then
it,
I'm
it should be
done.
fine.
Okay, good.
The other training that's out there, NASA's doing some board diversity training for board members across the nation, and so it is with Team Dynamics, the group that did the diversity training for Arts Midwest. And I will send you a link to that. If you want to take advantage of that, you are encouraged to do so. In addition, in your notes, you have a big long list of what's been going on with the staff, so that you understand what's happening, who we're connecting with, what kinds of things are happening, so that we don't have to regurgitate them here in the meeting. A couple things that I think, Karen, in a minute, I'm going to ask you to think about talking about Arts Midwest, and then I'll note another piece as well. The Science Festival is coming up in October 21st through the 24th. This year, I will be doing 2 podcasts with co-founder Laura Heisler. One is a Badger Talk, and one is in preparation for the Badger Talk. So there'll be opportunities for the Arts Board to be noted for its co-founding of the Science Festival, now 11 years in, and how exciting that is, that it continues, and it is in fact a statewide project. So I'm looking forward to having that opportunity to do that. So the 3 other things I just want to quickly touch on, I'd like Karen to touch on the Arts Midwest Conference. Want to talk about a call that just occurred, which was instigated by your staff, a national call that was instigated by your staff. And then finally, before we leave old business, I want to make sure we take care of the Americans for the Arts and Economic Prosperity 6 contract, so that we can move forward with that. So Karen, can you touch on Arts Midwest?
Multitasking and muted, not a happy combo. Yes, I'm actually looking for the email that I sent to George with my notes related to the conference, the Arts Midwest Conference. And while I'm looking for it, I do want to ask if we could, for the December board meeting, for those board members that choose to take advantage of NASA's diversity webinar and that training piece, if we could put some space in the agenda for any thoughts that come from that to be shared, that would be really great. For some reason, George, I don't know where my notes, oh, nope, I don't know where my notes to that went. But I did capture one of the pieces, which was a really interesting WPN-based conversation related to the Arts Midwest conference, and it came out because one of the Arts Midwest conference was great, virtually challenging, particularly for agents and presenters to connect in a time when presenters cannot plan out their next season in many cases. But still, they managed to pull together some remarkable speakers and panels. One panel was a challenge for the presenters in our room as they were talking about some marketing. And one of the questions was, how do we gauge why our audiences are not coming back right now? And this is someone from a very large hall. And one of the speakers' response was, call them and find out, which was not perhaps the most realistic approach for that particular presenter. Certainly, for some presenters, that's an option. And doing some random call sampling, definitely an option. But they found that particular panel, as you'll have with any conference, was really geared toward presenters at a more early level of their development. And we talked about the fact that the Arts Midwest conference, and I'll share this with Arts Midwest too, especially virtually, you have the option of doing 3 breakout rooms, right? You have the option of having 2 facilitators dealing with presenters in the early stages of their development, presenters in the mid stages, and presenters that are very advanced, so that everybody, no matter where they're coming from, can get something out of the conversation. So I hope to see that in future conferences, but in the meantime, that was an interesting thing that came out. The other, their opening session was awesome, and I'm gonna see if I can get a link to that, even though you guys didn't sign up for it. If there's a way to share that with you, because it was two presenters, one from a writers organization out of Chicago, and one out of Penumbra company in the Twin Cities, and it was, I'll try to get it to you. It was a remarkable one, and the closing, they bookended with really strong sessions, and that's not something that I take for granted in this time of Zoom, etc. So yeah, I'm actually not going to share any of the notes that I shared with you, George. I've taken enough time with this. But if there's something that you wanted me to particularly share out, call it out.
No, I wanted to make sure that we noted that it happened, that it again was virtual, and I think we need to also note that Arts Midwest is trying to figure out its way forward with the conference as a regional presenters conference. They're trying to consider what it should look like going forward, who should be involved, what aspects of the industry should be covered, et cetera. So they're taking that moment with new leadership to figure that out. And so I think that's good. The call that I was asking Karen to talk about comes from the most recent immigrants to our state. And Karen, why don't you pick it up there?
Yeah, so as Caitlin and as we all have been sort of watching what's going on with within the Fort McCoy area and the Afghani refugees and resettlement challenges, thinking about, especially in this time, when we have racial justice challenges really pulling at the fabric of many of our communities, to add this piece into the mix. How can the arts help communities prep to have a positive welcome and connect? How can we, so working within the communities that will be potentially receiving new community members and getting the arts involved in that conversation beforehand, as opposed to, after challenges have already happened. And also just how to connect with those communities and with those specific Afghan refugees once they are in community, once they've gotten through all of the white noise that's going on right now about how do I survive, how do I get clothing, what am I going to do for a job, where am I going to live, all that stuff. Once they have a moment to breathe, how to connect with them on that and engage their own creativity, connect them with creative resources that are already here, all of that stuff. So we asked NASA to pull together a call with all the state arts agencies that are specifically dealing with either receiving Afghani refugees in their states or have had experience with resettlement and immigrant populations to this level before. And so that was yesterday. And Caitlin, I hope I've set the table enough, because I would love to turn to you just to see what you heard in that conversation of yesterday. We had, I think, was it 18 people?
Yeah, 18.
Okay.
Including us.
Okay, great.
I
Anyway.
don't know if that mute is because one of us isn't muted, but or that feedback. But yeah, it was a great call. It was the folk arts, specifically with the folk arts coordinators and the community development folks. So good to even have us together on a call because we don't get many opportunities to gather beyond our own kind of peer groups. So that was nice. I think a reminder that these new community members are going to be in survival mode for a while. And a really interesting perspective from one of the folk arts coordinators who's in New Jersey, who came here as a refugee herself, then worked as a refugee, in resettlement work through social services agency, and now is the folk and traditional arts coordinator. So really great to have Kim's voice on that call, and was one of the people who really said 6 months to a year, good that we're thinking about this now, but this is really long haul work. So, and interesting to think about the just potential of making sure that those social service agencies and other organizations that work directly with refugees understand the sort of value of cultural expression and creative expression. So yeah, it was just a really informal conversation, but a good one, I would say.
That makes me really happy because I think, Karen, didn't we talk about this at the strategic planning where I had brought up just making sure that we were reaching out to see what it is that we could do as they need to express the trauma they've experienced, as we know from, military veterans, how the critical need the arts play in settling the mind or being able to make sense of things, that it might be a great way for the Wisconsin Arts Board, or at least to be the impetus of getting communities involved in helping them come to terms with everything that has happened and expressing it through art. And then I can't wait when John Potter lets me have the folk arts panel back to see Afghani arts apprenticeship programs come through it. The way they see Hmong. And so I think it's a great opportunity. And I think the arts are always very good at welcoming. And I think the arts are grounding and show common humanity and shared experience across the board. So I'm so thrilled you guys were on that.
It was an interesting sort of bifurcated conversation because you had the folklorists focusing on the creative expressions of the people who are going to be coming in, and in some degree the artists who are already within these communities. And then you had the community development voice going, and what can we do to help prep the communities right now that are going to be hopefully positively welcoming these new members of their communities. And that doesn't have to wait 6 months or a year or two or whatever. In fact, I wish that I had heard stories from other states about how that's happening now, because we've certainly had some negative press already on how people going into the fort and touring have damaged potential relationships within communities. So how do we build up into those who can welcome and be positive about this, and address the community members that have deep concerns about new members? And this is just one of many stories that will be, I think, unrolling over the next years as coastal communities find different ways to live.
Whoa.
Sorry.
So the reason I wanted to make sure this was on the agenda was for a couple of things. The superpowers of the Arts Board have always been community development and the traditional and ethnic arts. And so cultural understanding with this new population would be in our wheelhouse for sure. But I also wanted to make note of the fact that our staff led the way to a national conversation about this. And I think that that's really important to note as well.
I agree. I mean, I think the things you're seeing in the media right now, at least in Wisconsin, is the 2 men who were arrested for rape or abusing a spouse at Camp Randall. You know what I mean? Camp McCoy.
Fort McCoy. Yeah.
Fort McCoy. Yeah, Camp Randall, that would be college students. But you want to get a better spin as it's not even spin, it's telling that out of the thousands of people who are there, this is 2 individuals. And so I think anything the arts can do. And so bravo for getting that group together to start talking about it so that it can ease communities in understanding that diversity doesn't mean crime. It just means someone who doesn't necessarily look like you. And right now they need all the support they can get because they're in some place they don't know and don't know if they're safe or not.
And Brian, I was glad to hear your enthusiasm for the apprenticeship program and the potential there. And it was a good reminder yesterday to think about accessibility in terms of translation and sort of language justice and how we make our applications accessible to all. But as we think about, newcomer and refugee community members, and there was, and the potential for, this last year we incorporated the video option to submit your narrative by video or sort of by interview, and that would be just a conversation instead. So the potential there too. So just thinking about accessibility in terms of our applications as well.
So to close out the old business section. Oh
Can-
yeah, go
can I-
John.
just one
Yeah, of
more
course.
addition. I really appreciate Caitlin and George, your leadership on thinking ahead on this and taking it to kind of a national conversation. I can tell you that at the Department of Public Instruction, I've had staff share with the folks at Fort McCoy, the folks who are working on settlement of refugees, and especially our big partner, Department of Children and Family, where there are students right now in Wisconsin who speak the 4 major languages of Afghanistan, because those would be districts that would also may have some of the resources that would help those students. And secondly, we're working on just some simple translation flashcards for Fort McCoy staff who are working with young kids right now. And I've also talked to the superintendents of Sparta and Toma. Right now, the plan for children who are at Fort McCoy is they're getting whatever education is being provided through the fort, through federal government. And they aren't enrolling in the 2 local school districts there. Because I think really the purpose and the point is to resettle as fast as possible, whatever that looks like.
John, could we please follow up at some point soon about how, in addition to flashcards, in addition to the work that is being done with the students, we think about how the arts might be integrated into some of those exchanges, just maybe even very covertly.
Yeah,
but
that sounds great.
Okay, thanks.
That sounds great. We have actually, I'm really blessed by one of our new assistant state superintendents is Yui Wynn, who runs that whole academic area, including the arts. And he himself was a refugee to the United States. So love to hook you up with Yui.
Thank you. All right, we have 2 final pieces from our end. One is old business, one is new business. So in the old business category, we do need to take action on the Arts and Economic Prosperity 6 project. And just to get the board's approval to go ahead with that project, you had the contract in your this and actually previous versions of the our meetings. So if you had any questions about the contract itself, otherwise, the chair, I'm sure, would accept a motion to approve.
I will make that motion to approve participation in Americans for the Arts, the Arts and Economic Prosperity taking place in 2022, correct? It's 2022.
Yeah.
Yes, so in 2022.
Second, Hoffman.
Any discussion? Hearing
will
none,
just-
all in favor, say aye.
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 Any
And for-
opposed? Hearing
And I
none,
was-
motion carries.
And for the record, PAHA, we've already signed on in Door County and paid our fee.
Right, and so we're looking forward to others doing the same. And I was just going to note that this will make the 6th study that the Arts Board has participated in. And so we are old hands at this, and recognized nationally as being one of the states that is a constant in this participation. So thank you for continuing that. I guess, Mr. Chair, you should call for one more old business before we go to new business.
George, before you do that, if you need
Yeah.
if you need any convincing within communities, send it my way. I'd be happy to talk about the power of the data we received and how we were able to parlay that within our own community, within grants, and within individual donors themselves.
Great, happy to do that.
Any other calls for old business? All right, new business. I think we hit on a big topic there. I think I'm going to send out an email with the Afghan communities. I think we've got a great opportunity there to really have an impact. And you saw how we all kind of responded to that. So thank you for that. And I think, as George says, this is right in our wheelhouse. And I think we need to provide leadership wherever we can. Anybody else have any new business they need to bring up?
As a matter of fact, yes, I would like to yield the floor to Ms. Caitlin Burrow.
I have some new business. The fun part about Zoom is you can only see me from here up. And if you could see me from here down, you could probably tell that I'm about 6 months pregnant now.
Oh, yay!
Yeah. Jesse and I are really thrilled and terrified and starting to really nest here. So yeah, so I will be working through at my tentative due date is January 12th. So I will be on board until then and then taking some time after that, but back in time for our panels in the spring. So thank you again to those panel chairs. And
hold on a little longer so you get an Aquarius and not a Capricorn.
You know, everyone's like, oh, a Capricorn. So we'll see what we get. We'll take what we get, but yeah, we're thrilled, and it's been, as you all would have imagined, I couldn't ask for more supportive coworkers as we go through this brand new experience. Just Karen in particular, having gone through it herself, just the patience and understanding on the days where, especially early on, I had lots of insomnia and was not quite feeling like myself. So just grateful all the time for you all, and yeah, excited to share the news. So thanks, George.
I will move to approve of the pregnancy.
Thanks, Matt. I'll put that in the minutes.
I think that's out of order, actually. That's out of order.
Congratulations, Caitlin.
Thanks, Matt.
Let the minutes not reflect.
All right.
Wonderful. All right. Well, thank you, everybody. For time, we need to have a motion to adjourn. This most provocative.
Second, Kelsey.
Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor, say aye.
You don't need to vote. You don't need to vote. As soon as you have a
every time, Kevin.
Second, you are adjourned.
You change it on me every time.
Wagner moved.
Okay.
Right. Hey, everybody, stay safe. Talk to you soon.
Bye.
Everybody. Bye. Congrats, Caitlin.
Everyone.